Forward! The top secret truth about Captain Underpants. In our last 3 adventures, we tried to save our crazy principal from disaster. He thought he was a real superhero, but he wasn't.
We didn't think things couldn't get any worse, but they did.
Once upon a time, there are 2 cool kids named George and Harold.
You're awesome.
Me too! They had a mean old principal named Mr. Krupp.
Blah blah blah.
Mr. Krupp was really mean to George and Harold.
Blah blah blah.
So they brought the 3D hypno ring. They used it to hypnotize to Mr. Krupp. You will obey us!
Okay.
But they made a terrible mistake.
You are now Captain Underpants.
Okay.
Hey! Come back, Mr. Krupp!
Tra-la-la.
Mr. Krupp thought he really was Captain Underpants, but he didn't have any superpowers.
Stop!
You big dummy! They had a lot of adventures. One time they even got attacked by a UFO. Uh-oh! They all got took into the spaceship, and George stole some alien superpower juice. Then Mr. Krupp got eaten by a big evil dandelion.
You had to be there.
So George gave him some superpower juice. Then he got superpowers. Now Captain Underpants has amazing strength. He can even fly too.
Holy cow!
The only way George and Harold can stop Captain Underpants from causing trouble is by pouring water on his head. This makes him turn back into Mr. Krupp.
Hey Bob.
But beware, because whenever Mr. Krupp hears somebody snap their fingers, he turns back into you-know-who. Oh no!
Here we go again.
Tra-la-la.
The end. Treehouse Comics Inc. Chapter 1. George and Harold. This is George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left with the tie and the flat top. Harold's the one on the right with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now? All of the experts at Jerome Horowitz Elementary School had their opinions about George and Harold. Their guidance counselor, Mr. Rector, thought the boys suffered from ADD. The school psychologist, Miss Labeler, diagnosed them with ADHD. And their mean old principal, Mr. Krupp, thought they were just plain old BAD. But if you ask me, George and Harold simply suffer from IBSS, incredibly boring school syndrome. You see, George and Harold weren't really bad kids. They were actually very bright, good-natured boys. Their only problem is that they were bored in school, so they took upon themselves to line things up for everybody. Wasn't that thoughtful of them? Unfortunately, George and Harold's thoughtfulness got them into trouble every now and then. Sometimes it got them into a lot of trouble, and one time it got them into so much trouble it almost caused the entire planet to be taken over by a ruthless, maniacal mad scientist guy in a giant robot suit. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 2. All Hell New Switzerland. As everybody knows, New Switzerland is a small country just southeast of Greenland. You probably know about New Switzerland's natural resources and system of government. But there's something about New Switzerland that I'll bet you didn't know. Everyone in New Switzerland has a silly name. Just ask their president, the Honorable Junker Jingleberry McMonkey Burger Jr. or his lovely wife, Stinky. They'll tell you about New Switzerland's proud, silly name heritage. They'll tell you about the cultural significance of silly names. And then they'll tell you a really long boring story of how this stupid tradition got started. We'll skip that part, okay? Just remember that everybody in New Switzerland has a silly name. From the richest to the poorest, to the dumbest to the smartest. And speaking of the smartest, let me introduce you to Professor Pippy P Poopypants. That's a statue of him down there in the bottom right hand corner of the page. Now, Pippy P Poopypants was probably the smartest person in all New Switzerland. He graduated at the head of his class at Chunky Q Wilderness University, and afterwards spent all his time creating wild and fantastic inventions. Let's look in on him, shall we? Back in his private laboratory, Professor Pippy P Poopypants was just putting the finishing touches on his 2 wonderful new inventions, the Shrinky Pig 2000 and the Goosey Grow 4000. Professor Poopypants calls for his assistant, Pork Belly Funky Skunk.
Mr. Funky Skunk!
Pippy yelled.
I'm now ready to test my new inventions!
Pork Belly took notes while the professor aimed the Shrinky Pig 2000 at the hideous pile of trash. Blizzard! A powerful beam of energy blasted to the garbage heap. Suddenly, the large pile of trash shrank to the size of a gumball.
Hooray! It works!
Cried Professor Poopypants.
Now I must try the Goosey Grow 4000!
Pippy and Pork Belly aimed the Goosey Go 4000 at an ordinary hot dog with mustard. Blizzard! With another bright beam of energy. Suddenly, the hot dog grew and grew until it crashed through the walls of the laboratory.
We did it!
exclaimed Pork Belly.
What do you mean, we?
Yelled Professor Poopypants.
I did it. I'm the genius. You're just a lonely assistant, and don't you forget it.
Sorry, boss.
Said Pork Belly.
With these two inventions,
exclaimed Professor Poopypants.
I will be able to solve the world's garbage problem and create enough food for everyone on the entire planet.
Finally, it looked as if all the Earth's dilemmas will be fixed forever. But who had believed that in just a few short weeks, Professor Poopypants will be trying to take over the planet in a fit and frenzied rage? Well, dear listeners and readers, the tragic tale is about to unfold, but before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 3: The Field Trip. Joan Howard's elementary school was having its big annual field trip at PIQUA Pizza Palace. All of the kids had brought their permission slips and were lined up to get on the bus. George and Harold could hardly wait to eat pizza and play video games all afternoon.
This is gonna rule,
said George. Yeah, if we ever get there, said Harold.
Hey,
said George.
Let's change the letters around on the school sign while we're waiting.
Good idea, said Harold. So George and Harold ran over to the sign and began their thoughtfulness. Unfortunately, the boys didn't notice a nearby folding press is lurking nearby in the bushes.
Ha-ha!
Cried Mr. Krupp.
I caught you boys red-handed!
Oh!
Said George. Laughed Harold. This is just a little joke.
A joke!
Yelled Mr. Krupp.
Do you boys think it's funny?
George and Harold thought for a moment.
Whoa! Yeah,
said George. Don't you? Asked Harold.
No, I don't think it's funny.
Yelled Mr. Krupp.
I think it's rude and offensive.
That's why it's funny,
said George.
Oh,
said Mr. Krupp.
You boys like to laugh, huh? Well, here's a good one. You two are officially banned from the school field trip. Instead of eating pizza, you'll spend the afternoon cleaning up the teacher's lounge. Isn't that funny?
No way! Said Harold.
That's not funny at all,
said George.
That's cruel and unusual punishment.
That's why it's funny.
Mr. Krupp sneered. Chapter 4: Left Behind. Or behind, or whatever. Mr. Krupp marched George and Harold over to the janitor's closet.
You can use these supplies to clean the teacher's lounge,
said Mr. Krupp.
I want it spotless by the time we get back.
Mr. Krupp went back outside, climbed onto the school bus, and laughed loudly. As the buses pulled away, the teachers all pointed at George and Harold and laughed too. Rats! Said Harold. I thought we were gonna have fun today.
We can still have fun,
said George.
All we need is a splatter, a box of powdered paste, and those big boxes of styrofoam wormy thingies. So
George and Harold carried their supply to the teacher's lounge and got down to business. At the sink, George pulled the sprayer nozzle while Harold carefully taped the sprayer handle in the on position. Then the two boys put the nozzle back, making sure that the sprayer head was pointed in the right direction. Next, George held the letter steady while Harold climbed out to the ceiling fan. There, he began scooping generous amounts of powder waste onto the tops of the fan blades. Is this right? Asked Harold.
Yeah,
said George.
Try to get most of it on the ends of the blades.
Got it, said Harold. George closed all the blinds while Harold adjusted the ceiling fan so they would turn on when the lights came on. Finally, the two boys filled the refrigerator up with worm-shaped styrofoam packaging pallets. This is going to be fun, said Harold.
Not for the teachers,
laughed George. Chapter 5: The Fun Begins. An hour or so later, the buses returned to school. All the children got off, packed up their stuff, and got ready to go home. Mr. FYDE, the science teacher, was on the school bus duty. The rest of the teachers gathered around George and Harold and began teasing them.
You kids sure did miss a fun field trip,
said Miss Ribble.
The pizza was so delicious. Too bad you didn't get any.
I wanted to bring you back a pizza,
said Mr. Meaner,
but I ate it on the bus.
He threw an empty box at George and Harold's feet, and the teachers howled with laughter.
Maybe you can lick the cheese off the box,
Mr. Krupp roared. The teachers eventually got tired of taunting George and Harold, so they retreated to the teacher's lounge to relax.
Hey, how come it's so dark in here?
Asked Mr. Meaner as he flicked on the lights. The ceiling fan began rotating very slowly. Miss Ribble went to the sink and turned on the faucet. Suddenly, the spray nozzle sprayed cold water all over her. She screamed.
Somebody turn the water off!
The other teachers sprang up and tried to help. They all got sprayed too. The ceiling fan was rotating faster now, and some of the powder paste began flying off the fan blades. The teachers struggled with the faucet, pushing and shoving each other. Finally, somebody turned the water off, but not before everybody was thoroughly soaked. The ceiling fan was now spinning at full speed. All the power of the fan blades has been flying off, and it was now flowing down to the wet teachers.
Hey, what the?
Cried the misdemeanor.
What's all this sticky stuff?
Yelled Misanthrope. By now, all the teachers were covered in gooey sticky paste. It didn't take a genius to know that Georgia Hell was behind this.
Don't spread me out the chicken soda!
Miss Riddle shouted. She dashed to the refrigerator and swung the door open. Swoosh! Suddenly, thousands of tiny styrofoam pellets threw out into the room. The wind from the ceiling fan blew the pellets around and around. Naturally, it landed on the stickiest things in the room. The teachers.
Ah!
Screamed the teachers. They ran out from the teachers' lounge, screaming and yelling. Georgia Hell saw what looked like a group of giant evil snowmen heading towards them.
I got a good idea.
Said George. What? Said Harold.
Run!
Said George. Chapter 6. Bye-bye, Mr. FYDE. The next day, Georgia Hell's science teacher, Mr. FYDE, knocked on Mr. Krupp's door.
What do you want?
Barked Mr. Krupp.
I've come to resign.
Said Mr. FYDE.
I just can't take it anymore. Now hold on, Bob.
Said Mr. Krupp.
Being a teacher is hard work. You can't just quit your job when things aren't you don't understand.
Said Mr. FYDE.
I think I'm cracking up. What do you mean?
Asked Mr. Krupp.
Well,
Said Mr. FYDE.
it all started a few months ago when I had this dream that I got eaten up by a talking toilet. Then I started hearing cats and dogs meowing and growling in the classroom. And then I imagined that the school got full of a sticky green goop. And just yesterday, I thought I saw a group of abominable snowmen chasing two boys down the hallway. Now wait a minute, Morty.
Said Mr. Krupp.
All of that could be explained. And a few days ago,
Said Mr. FYDE.
I thought I saw a big fat bald guy in his underwear fly out the window. Holy cow!
Said Mr. Krupp.
You are crazy!
So Mr. FYDE handed his resignation and left Joel Horowitz Elementary School for the greener pastures at the PIQUA Valley home for reality challenged.
Now, where am I going to find a new science teacher in such short notice?
Said Mr. Krupp.
Where? Oh, where?
Chapter 7. Here. Oh, here! Remember that Poopypants guy I was telling you about back in Chapter 2? Well, things haven't been going too well for him in the past several weeks. Professor Poopypants came to America to share the Shrinky Pig 2000 and the Gruesy 4000 with the world, but nobody seemed to want to hear about his inventions. They were all too busy laughing at his name. Poor Poopypants has been laughed out in every major scientific institution in the US. He's been giggled out of Georgetown, howled in Howard, yucked at Yale, snickered out of Stanford, and chuckled at Chattanooga State Technical Community College. Professor Poopypants was running out of money, and there's no place left for him to turn. Then, one day, the professor walked into a New York coffee shop and picked up a newspaper. And like a message from heaven, Pippy P Poopypants found his answer.
That's it!
He cried.
I'll become an elementary school science teacher. I'll work really hard, and soon people will come to respect me and see what a genius I am. Then I can introduce my great inventions to the world.
Pippy Poopypants was certain that the one place people wouldn't laugh at his name was in elementary school.
Kids are so accepting and loving.
He said.
You can always count on the sweetness and innocence of children.
Chapter 8. The Sweetness and Innocence of Children.
Hello, boys and girls.
Said the professor a week later.
I'm going to be your new science teacher. My name is Professor Pippy P. Poopypants. Alright, settle down, boys and girls. Yes, it's a funny name, I know. Let me explain how I got this name. Please, children, settle down. It's not that funny, let me assure you. Boys and girls, please stop laughing. Alright, I'm going to count to 10. And when I'm done, I want all of you to quiet down so we can learn about the wonderful world of science. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9.5. Children, please stop laughing. I know you're all very far behind in your lessons, and we've got a lot of catching up to do. Boys and girls, stop it! I'm not gonna tell you again! It's not funny! There's no reason at all of you to be laughing at my name. I'm sure we all have funny names if you think about it. Stop it right now! Okay, boys and girls. I'll just wait until you all settle down. I can wait.
A week later, things hadn't got any better. Professor Poopypants was really beginning to get angry.
How am I going to get through to these children?
He asked himself.
Hey, I got it. I'll create a wonderful new invention.
Chapter 9. The GERBIL Jogger 2000. The next morning, Professor Poopypants came to school with an odd-looking miniature robot.
Children,
He said,
I created a new invention using the principles of science. It's called the GERBIL Jogger 2000.
The children stopped laughing for a moment and looked with interest at Professor Poopypants' new invention.
You see, children,
Said the professor.
some people like to jog, and their pets like to jog along beside them. That's fine if you have a dog or a cat, but what if you have a pet gerbil? It used to be a big problem, but not anymore.
Professor Poopypants opened the glass dome of the GERBIL Jogger 2000 and inserted a cute fuzzy gerbil. The gerbil pushed his tiny legs against the simple controls, and suddenly, the machine came to life. In no time at all, the gerbil was jogging around the classroom in his tiny robot suit. The children were delighted,
Wow!
said Connor Mancini.
Science is cool!
All the other children agreed, thought Professor Poopypants.
I've reached them. Now I can teach them. Excuse me?
Said George to the professor.
What's your middle name? My middle name
Said the professor proudly.
is Pippy. Why do you ask?
At that point, the children picked up where they left off, laughing at Professor Pippy P Poopypants' ridiculous name. The professor began to shake with anger. Tiny veins on his forehead started growing, and his face turned bright red.
I can't take much more of this.
The furious professor said through clenched teeth.
I think I might blow a fuse if just one more thing happens.
Chapter 10. Just one more thing. Soon afterward, in reading class, the children all heard the story of the Pied Piper from Hamelin,
No,
said George.
that story gives me an idea.
So George and Hal began working on their newest comic book, Captain Underpants and the Pied Pooper of PIQUA. That afternoon, they snuck into the office and ran off copies of their new adventure to sell on the playground. And everything would be just fine if one of the third graders had left his copy lying around the hallway. Chapter 11. Captain Underpants and the Pied Pooper of PIQUA. Once upon a time in the city of PIQUA, Ohio, there was a science teacher whose name was Pippy Poopypants.
My middle name is Pippy.
Everybody laughed at his funny name. This made Pippy mad.
I'll show them.
So he built an army of GERBIL Joggers 2000s.
Ha!
He put out gerbils in each one.
Hey, man.
But he couldn't make them do any evil stuff.
Rats.
Then he thought of an evil plan.
But of course.
He made a bunch of little headphones to put them on the gerbils.
Hey.
So Professor Poopypants' army of GERBIL Jogger 2000s were on an evil rampage. They all head straight for the school.
Help! The GERBIL Jogger 2000 broke in the cafeteria. They just knocked over some cupcakes and now they're attacking the gym teacher. Quick! Somebody save the cupcakes!
Professor Poopypants and his evil army rounded all the children.
Follow me. Ha
This looks like a job for...
Captain Underpants!
What seems to be the problem?
I'm taking these kids to be my slaves.
And just who do you think you are?
I'm Professor Poopypants and
Professor Poopypants was really mad, so he pressed upon his bow tie, and his bow tie transported him into a giant cyborg.
Hello?
They had a big fun, but Captain Underpants was faster than a speeding waistband, more powerful than boxer shorts,
Owie!
and able to lay tall bells without getting a wedgie.
Tra-la-la!
Professor Poopypants takes our hero to an junkyard.
I got you now, waistband warrior. I'm gonna crush you.
Captain Underpants placed a ball in his utility waistband, and out popped the tiny toy of truth. Captain Underpants ate the tiny toy of truth at Robo Pippy.
I'm rusted.
Captain Underpants saved the day!
But what about the gerbils?
They're not evil. Look! Professor Poopypants was controlling them with this!
Is it music?
No. Listen. This will make anybody turn evil.
So Captain Underpants destroyed the controller.
Tra-la-la!
Hallelujah! Hooray for The end! Notice, all animal cruelty was simulated. No actual gerbils were forced to listen to chair. Treehouse Comics Inc. Chapter 12. Professor P goes crazy. In his entire life, Professor Poopypants had never been as angry as he was at the very moment. As he stood up in the hallway, something inside his fragile brain snapped. He began shaking and sweating uncontrollably. Suddenly, a wicked smile stretched across the professor's face. He struggled towards the empty classroom, mumbling to himself and giggling. He had hit rock bottom, and he decided to pull the rest of the planet down with him. Pippy P Poopypants was going to take over the world. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you, oh, never mind. I just tell you that story. Chapter 13. Honey, I Shrunk the School. Professor Poopypants opened the storage closet in his classroom and took out the Shrinky Pig 2000 and the Greasy Girl 4000. He also grabbed an empty GERBIL Jogger 2000 and stumbled outside with his inventions. The crazed professor giggles wildly to himself as he aimed the Greasy Girl 4000 at the GERBIL Jogger 2000. Blizzard! Suddenly, the GERBIL Jogger 2000 grew 10 stories high. Professor Poopypants began his long climb out the side of the GERBIL Jogger 2000. It took almost an hour, but eventually he reached a huge glass dome at the top and squeezed his way inside.
Mommy!
Said a little boy who was walking by with his mother.
The little man just crawled into a giant robot suit and is about to take over his school.
Oh, for heaven's sakes!
Said his mother.
Where did you come up with this nonsense? This could have told me that a giant man in his underwear is fighting a huge robot in the middle of the city.
Professor Poopypants was now in control of the colossal GERBIL Jogger 2000. He reached down with his mighty arm, picked up the Shrinky 2000, and aimed it at the school. Blizzard! Just then, George and Harold looked out the window.
Hey,
Said George.
isn't that the gerbil robot thingy?
Yeah, said Harold. Why is it so big?
I don't know.
Said George.
But it's getting bigger by a second.
Said Harold.
I think it's getting bigger. I think we're getting smaller.
Chapter 14. The Perilous Plot. Professor Poopypants reached down and picked up the tiny school with his giant robotic hand. Everyone screamed in horror. In no time at all, when this newswoman, Ingrid Ashley, was on the scene.
What would you want from us?
Shouted reporter Ashley.
I want a pencil.
Screamed Professor Poopypants.
A pencil?
Asked reporter Ashley.
Here, take mine.
She tossed a yellow number 2 pencil towards the giant robot. Professor Poopypants reached down with his giant robot arm, picked up the Goosey Go 4000, and aimed it at the pencil. Blizzard! The pencil grew to the size of a tree trunk, and Professor Poopypants grabbed it.
Follow me.
He said. The giant robot led the news crew to the center of downtown PIQUA. There, he found 3 large wide bulletin boards. He put down the Shrinky Pig 2000 and the Greasy 4000 and began writing on the bulletin boards with his giant pencil. Chapter 15. The Name Change O Chart 2000. Professor Poopypants spent several minutes jogging down a complex code on the 3 giant bulletin boards. George and Harold, along with nearly 1,000 of their fellow shrunken students, watched the mad professor from the terrifying crunch of his giant robotic hand.
What is that crazy guy up to?
Asked Mr. Krupp from his office window.
I'll tell you.
Shouted Pippy Poopypants.
Everybody on the planet must now change their normal names into silly names using these free charts. Anyone who refuses will get shrunk!
How do the charts work?
Asked Mr. Krupp.
It's easy.
Said Professor Poopypants.
What's your first name?
I'm not telling.
Said Mr. Krupp.
What is your first name?
Shouted Professor Poopypants.
Alright.
Said Mr. Krupp.
It's, Bunny.
All of the children giggled.
So the first one of your first name is B.
Said Pippy.
Now look at the first chart and find the letter B.
Mr. Krupp looked at the chart.
It says, B Lumpy.
He whined.
Good.
Said Professor Poopypants.
Your new first name is Lumpy.
All of the children laughed.
Lumpy Krupp?
Moaned Mr. Krupp.
I don't want to be called Lumpy Krupp.
You won't,
Laughed Professor Poopypants.
because you have to change your last name too.
Uh-oh.
Said Mr. Krupp.
Your last name is Krupp.
Said the professor.
It starts with a K and ends with a P. Now find the letter K on the second chart, and the letter P on the third chart.
Mr. Krupp looked at the 2 charts.
It says K Party and P Biscuits.
Wonderful.
shouted the professor.
Your newest name is Potty Biscuits.
Oh no!
Groaned the principal.
My new name is Mumpy Potty Biscuits!
The children all howled with laughter.
Don't laugh too hard, kiddies.
Said Professor Poopypants.
You ought to change your names too, or I'll shrink you again.
Well, as you can imagine, nobody wanted to be shrunk twice, so everybody looked at the 3 charts and figured out their new silly names. Stephanie Yarkov became Snotty Gorilla Breath, Rodney Steinberg became Lumpy Pizza Pants, and poor little Janet Warwick became Poopsie Chucklebutt.
This may be the most horrible moment in all of human history,
Said the local news reporter to her audience.
It seems that everybody on Earth must now change his or her name to avoid getting shrunk. Good luck to you all. This is Chim Chim Diaper Brains reporting from Eyewitness News. Now back to you, Booger.
Chapter 16. Fluffy and Cheeseball. This is Fluffy Toilet Notes and Cheeseball Waffle Fanny. Fluffy is the kid on the left with the tie and the flat top. Cheeseball is the one on the right with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now?
We gotta do something.
Cried Fluffy.
Oh, what?
Said Cheeseball.
We're smarter than 2 mice. What could possibly do?
Let's go find our old friend Captain Underpants.
Said Fluffy. So Fluffy and Cheeseball ran to Mr. Potty Biscuits' office and found him cowering under the table.
Can't believe I'm allowed to do this.
Said Fluffy.
And he knows nothing.
Fluffy snapped his fingers. Suddenly, a strange change came over Lumpy Potty Biscuits. His worried frown quickly turned to a heroic smile. He rose from behind his desk and thrust out his chest. In no time at all, Mr. Potty Biscuits has removed his outer clothing and tied a red curtain around his neck.
Tra-la-la!
Sang the hero.
Captain Underpants' hair.
Cool.
Said Cheeseball.
But from now on, you have to call yourself Buttercup Chicken Fanny. The guy in the jungle said so.
Hey,
Said Captain Underpants.
I don't take orders from anybody.
Wait,
Said Fluffy.
now fly out that window and bring out the little machine thingy with the lava lamp on top.
Yes, sir.
Said Captain Underpants. Chapter 17. Captain Underpants to the rescue! Captain Underpants flew down to the ground and grabbed the Goosey Go 4000. But on his way back up, he was spotted by Professor Poopypants. The hero professor zapped Captain Underpants by a bolt of energy from the Shrinky Pig 2000. Blizzard! Suddenly, the waistband warrior began to shrink even smaller than before. He flew back to the tiny classroom carrying the extremely small Goosey Go 4000, and he dropped it into Fluffy's hand.
Hey, where's Captain Underpants?
Asked Fluffy.
I don't know.
Said Cheeseball.
I think he got shrunken so small that we can't see him anymore.
Well,
Said Fluffy.
then where's he have his little invention thingy?
How's that gonna help us?
Asked Cheeseball.
I saw Professor Pippy Pants use it to make that pencil grow really big.
Said Fluffy.
It's the only hope of ever getting back to normal size.
I hope it still works.
Said Cheeseball. Fluffy and Cheeseball dashed to the school kitchen and climbed out the ladder on the roof.
Maybe if it's out of school this way, everybody will grow back to normal size.
Said Fluffy.
Good idea.
Said Cheeseball.
Then we can all run away.
Chapter 18.
Are you there, Dad? It's us, Fluffy and Cheeseball.
Fluffy pointed the Goosey Go 4000 at the roof of the school and got ready to press the button. But the boys were spotted by Professor Poopypants. Quickly, he turned his mighty robotic hand, and Fluffy and Cheeseball slid off the roof. Downward they tumbled through the air.
Oh no!
Shouted Cheeseball.
Wait, no!
Wait a second.
Cried Fluffy.
Do you have a piece of paper on you?
Yeah!
Screamed Cheeseball.
Right here in my pocket! But what kind is it gonna cost now?
Look!
Cried Fluffy.
Put it into a paper airplane!
What kind of paper airplane?
Asked Cheeseball.
Any kind!
Screamed Fluffy.
Let's do it now!
Quickly, Cheeseball folded the paper into a goofy-looking glider.
How's this?
He screamed.
Great!
Yelled Fluffy.
Now hold steady!
Fluffy pointed the tiny Goosey Grow 4000 at Cheeseball's airplane and pressed the button. Blizzard! Suddenly, Cheeseball's airplane grew to an enormous size. Fluffy and Cheeseball fell down to it and the paper airplane took off, flying through the air.
Oh man!
Cried Cheeseball.
I can't believe that worked!
We're not out of this yet!
Yelled Fluffy. Chapter 19. The Flight of the Goofy Glider. Fluffy and Cheeseball had to admit that it was pretty cool flying over the city streets on a paper airplane. They didn't even seem to mind the fact that they were only about an inch tall each. But you can't imagine the boys' concert when they started heading straight for the wood chopper.
Oh
Cried Fluffy.
no! I'm gonna get, chip it to death!
Cheeseball couldn't look. He put his hands over his eyes and waited for the inedible. But suddenly, whoosh! The paper airplanes whirred sharply and missed the woodchopper altogether. Cried Fluffy.
I don't know!
Said Cheeseball.
I'm not seeing this thing!
The boys barely caught their breath when a small dog noticed the airplane and came running after them.
Oh no!
Cried Cheeseball.
We're gonna get
Fluffy covered his eyes this time, but wouldn't you believe it, the airplane swirled sharply outward and out of the range of the little dog altogether.
Oh, you're doing that?
Asked Cheeseball. Said Fluffy.
It must be the wind.
Finally, the paper airplane landed on a wet, sticky pile of hot blacktop. Said Fluffy.
What could be worse than getting stuck in a pile of blacktop?
Merry Christmas, big steamroller thingy!
Said Cheeseball.
Sure have an active imagination.
Said Fluffy.
No!
Said Cheeseball as he pointed upward.
Look!
Screamed Fluffy.
Oh, that steamroller made me to death.
Just then, the boys were yanked up by the backs of their shirts and carried off through the air to safety.
Something's gonna hold of us!
Cried Cheeseball.
But I can't see what it is!
Maybe that's Underpants.
Said Fluffy.
We just can't see it because it's so small.
Hey!
Said Cheeseball.
I've been here staring here for a day to do!
The boys shouted. Chapter 20. Extra, 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 extra large underpants. Fluffy and Cheeseball landed safely in an abandoned alley.
You got on large Captain Underpants so you can fight Professor Pippy Pants.
Said Fluffy.
The fate of the entire planet is in our hands.
But how can we allow him when we can't see him?
Asked Cheeseball.
Good question.
Said Fluffy.
Wait!
Said Cheeseball.
I have an idea!
He called out as loud as he could.
Captain Underpants! We can't see you! But if you can hear us, fly over and land on my finger! We have a machine that can make you big again!
The boys waited a few seconds.
Look, Fluffy!
Said Cheeseball.
There it is, see? It's that little tiny speck on my finger! Now just send the machine with that little speck! But don't stop my finger, okay?
Don't worry.
Said Fluffy.
I'm a great shot of this thing. I'm gonna zap your
Blizzard!
Oops. Sorry.
The good news was that Captain Underpants has grown larger and it was now visible. The bad news was, well, let's just say that Cheeseball was going to have an awful hard time picking his nose with his right hand from now on. Fluffy gave Captain Underpants a few more shots at the Gruesy Go 4000. The waistband warrior grew and grew and grew until he was 10 stories high. Finally, the colossal captain headed towards the preposterous professor. A showdown was about to begin. The little boy from chapter 13 happened to be walking by his mother again. He looked up and saw a giant man in his underwear getting ready to fight a huge robot in the middle of the city.
Mommy?
Said the boy. What? Asked his mother.
Never mind.
Said the boy. Chapter 21. The extremely graphic violence chapter. In Flip
Warning, the following chapter contains scenes that are so intense and horrific, they may not be suitable for viewing by people who can take a joke. If you are easily offended, or if you tend to blame all of society's evils onto shows and cartoon characters, please run to your nearest supermarket and get a life. They are located in the quote, get real unquote section next to the news. Good luck.
Introducing
Throughout the history of Great Art, there has been many times when artists have found their own unique styles, creating known as a movement. For example, there was the Renaissance movement, the Impressionist movement, and even the pop art movement.
Today, many art scholars agree that the early 21st century maker done history has the moment. Let's join its great art form and marvel at the emerging cultural significance, shall we?
Professor Poopypants packed a powerful punch. But the head button hero halted the horror.
Whoa, whoa!
The breathe-wearing bandit battled the bionic behemoth. The waistband warrior won the war. Chapter 22, the 22nd chapter. Professor Poopypants has been defeated, and everybody in the school cheered wildly. They were still small, but at least they got their own names back. Said Miss Ribble. Said Misdirected. Cried George. Harold was not amused.
Oops.
Said George.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Said Harold.
Just keep me your emergency so I can set this back to normal.
Harold held the Greasy Girl 4000 in his giant hand and slapped George and himself. That is, every part of himself except his giant hand. Blizzard! Suddenly, George and Harold were back to their normal sizes again.
Boy,
Said George.
sure have tested the limits of science today.
Yep, said Harold. And the latest of our readers' Wimley's suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Said George.
That too.
George and Harold picked up their tiny school and carried it where it belonged. George got ready to zap the school with a Greasy Girl 4000, while Harold prepared to zap Captain Underpants with a Shrinky Pig 2000.
I sure hope this works.
Said George. Me too, said Harold. Chapter 23. To make a long story short, it did. Chapter 24. The chapter before the last chapter. George took Captain Underpants over to the bushes behind the school and ordered him to dress up like Mr. Krupp.
Let's go back, bub.
Said George.
We haven't gone all day.
Then Harold had some fun with the garden hose. In no time at all, Mr. Krupp was back to his old nasty self again. Soon the cops showed up to arrest Professor Poopypants.
There's one thing I don't understand.
Said George to the professor.
Wouldn't it have been smarter to change your own name instead of forcing the rest of the world to change theirs? Gosh,
Said Professor Poopypants.
I never thought of that.
A few weeks later, George and Harold received a letter from PIQUA State Penitentiary. Dear George and Harold, sorry about trying to overthrow the world and everything. I decided to take your advice and change my name so that people won't laugh at me anymore. From now on, I'll be going by my grandfather's name on my mother's side. It's such a relief knowing that nobody will ever make fun of my name again. Signed, Pippy Twinkle Trousers. Chapter 25. The chapter after the chapter before the last chapter.
You know,
Said George.
I really learned something today.
What's that? Said Harold.
I learned that it's not nice to make fun of people.
Said George. Wow! Said Harold. I think this is the first time one of our stories ever had a moral.
Probably the last time too.
Said George. Let's hope so, said Harold. But George and Harold had forgotten all about the other moral they learned along the way, which was, don't ever hypnotize your principal, because if you do, your life can go from bad to worst at a snap of a finger. Oh no! Screamed Harold.
Here we go again!
Screamed George.
Tra-la-la!
Chaos, the mass confusion. PMP is a tab. Total chaos, the mass confusion. Rocks will hit the top. PMP is a tab. PMP is a tab. So think what I said and either bring something. Don't sleep on the end. You see something might blunt it. It don't take time for me to blow your mind. It take a second to reckon because you're dumb and blonde. So just lounge. But you an MC climb under the circus. PMP is a tab. Total chaos, the mass confusion. Rocks will hypnotize and know the pause and illusion. Like a magician, he draws a rabbit out of a hat, son. I'm doing more like a 44 Mac. MC3 stop with the listen and try to imagine. It's traveling the speed of light, but everything's motion is frightening. Plus the thought you alone, be down into dimension. Call the twilight zone, you're terrified. Plus you can't bear thought, you and I one-on-one. In the land of the lost, you start to shift. Then you scream, my friend, you wake up monthly. Because you're dreaming again, but next time I'm on the scene. Do not try to business, keep your mouth so socket jaw. Because I'm tricky business. Your mic is shot. 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 Your mic is shot.
You are listening to the sounds of Curtis Mantronic.
Tra-la-la!